Hello friends, welcome to a new chapter today. In this chapter, let us now learn about the central neuraxial blockade. So in the central neuraxial blockade, we have two types of central neuraxial blockade. One, we have subarachnoid block, or also called as spinal anesthesia. Second, we have extradural block, or we also have extradural anesthesia. So first, in the subarachnoid block or spinal anesthesia, here you see that the drug is mainly present in the subarachnoid space. I will just show you the layers also, just a minute. Here the drug is injected in the subarachnoid space, and here the onset is immediate onset. You will have, see, these are the important things. So if you see here, the drug is injected in subarachnoid space, there is immediate onset. The minimal amount of drug is also sufficient for injecting the drug into subarachnoid space, and this drug which we are going to inject in subarachnoid space should be hyperbaric heavy drug. To make a drug hyperbaric or heavy, we will have to add the drug, add dextrose to the drug. If we add dextrose to the drug, then the drug becomes hyperbaric and heavy. Then what are the steps? If you see in the steps, we have first we have spinal needle or Quincke's needle or Sprott or Whittaker needle. The needle is called as Quincke needle, Sprott or Whittaker needle. Here in this spinal needle, Quincke's needle or Whittaker or Sprott needle, we will first pierce the skin, and once we pierce the skin and we enter the subcutaneous fossa. Okay, and in the subcutaneous fossa we have the following ligaments. We have supraspinals or infraspinous ligaments. First we will pierce the skin and enter the subcutaneous fossa. So this leads to the, so from the subcutaneous fossa, okay, I'll just make boxes. Okay, the spinal needle, we will pierce the skin. From there we enter the subcutaneous fossa. From there we will have to pierce the supraspinous and infraspinous ligament or ligamentum flavus. Then we will pierce the dura mater, arachnoid mater, and after piercing the arachnoid mater we enter the subarachnoid space. Okay, so from this subarachnoid space, in the subarachnoid matter or space, we will see the CSF coming out. Okay, this subarachnoid block or spinal anesthesia is actually relatively easier, and it fails less. It has fixed duration, and this can be used as an intraoperative analgesia. Okay, but one important disadvantage of this anesthesia is segmental block is not possible, especially in spinal anesthesia. The segmental block is not possible, and we need more hemodynamic imbalance can occur. Okay, segmental block is not possible and more hemodynamic imbalance can occur. This is mainly done on L2, L3, L3, L4 and L4, N5 spinal segments. This is most commonly done in L2, L3, L3, L4 and L4, L5 spinal segments. Okay, then if you see, this subarachnoid block can produce a type of anesthesia called as saddle anesthesia. Okay, so if the subarachnoid block is given in sitting position, okay, then we call it as saddle anesthesia. Okay, then this is saddle anesthesia, subarachnoid block. Then I'll show you the pictures of both these extradural and subarachnoid space. Just wait for 5 minutes. Okay, I'll complete the topic and then I'll show you the pictures. So in the now extradural block or extradural anesthesia, in this the drug is present in the extradural space, that is above the dura. You have, if this is the cranium of the skull, then we have dural space, then we have arachnoid matter, and we have pia mater. In extradural space is above the dura, that is between the dura and the pericranium, we have the extradural space. So the anesthesia that we produce, that is produced between the dura and extracranial space, is called as extradural anesthesia. So here the anesthesia is in extradural space, and here there is delayed onset, and you can even produce segmental anesthesia with the help of this extradural anesthesia. So if you give pre-segment, that is 1.5 to 2 ml of drug is given in the pre-segment. If for 10 segments, if you take 15 to 20 ml of drug is given, and this will might cause systemic toxicity. Okay, this is a plain drug also. This extradural block or extradural anesthesia is a plain drug. So if you see the steps of extradural anesthesia, first you will use a needle called as Tawes needle, and through this Tawes needle you will pierce the skin. Okay, and from then you will pierce the skin, subcutaneous tissue, then you will pierce the supra and infraspinous ligament, then you will pierce the ligamentum flavum and enter the epidural space. Here you are not going into the dura mater, remember, you are not piercing the dura mater. Okay, then in the epidural space you will see the loss of resistance, and that is where you should give this epidural anesthesia. So if you see, for this epidural anesthesia one requires the presence of more expertise. So one should have more expertise for this epidural anesthesia, because there is increased chances of failure. The duration of anesthesia is prolonged, and you can give this epidural anesthesia can be given both for intraoperative anesthesia and also for post-operative anesthesia. If you see this subarachnoid anesthesia, that is spinal anesthesia, you can only give for intraoperative anesthesia, whereas this epidural anesthesia can be given both for intraoperative and post-operative anesthesia. And here mainly we can do this segmental block. See, I have already told you about segmental block. I don't know whether you understood or not. So in the segmental block, for example, if you want segmental block of just, it is an arbitrary values L4 and L5, you need this segmental block. Or you wanting that not L4, if you want a segmental block for T12 and L1, okay, this is the segmental block which you want. Okay, just before this segment, that is at T11, in T11 segment you give 1.5 to 2 ml of drug is given. Okay, so pre-segmentally, that is before the segmental block which you need, you give 1.5 to 2 ml of drug. This drug will travel to this segment and it will produce anesthesia for this segment. But if in any case, if you give 10 segments, if for 10 segments, see, for one segment you give 1.5 to 2 ml, then for 10 segments how much should you give? You should give 15 to 20 ml of the drug. If you give 15 to 20 ml of the drug thinking in view of 10 segments, then there is increased risk of systemic toxicity. That is the main thing which is meaning of this two sentences. Okay, normally if you give one per segment or few segments, it is not toxic, but if you give for 10 segments or more, then there is increased risk of systemic toxicity. And here you will also see the presence of minimum hemodynamic imbalance. So see, and it will block thoracic, lumbar and sacral segments also. But in the spinal anesthesia, it will only block lumbar segments, that is L2, L3, L4, and below that will only be blocked. See, what is important here is, in this there is post-operative anesthesia you can give. You can use it for post-operative anesthesia. Okay, you can give segmental block with the help of this. Okay, and here if you see, this produces minimum hemodynamic imbalance, so this produces maximum hemodynamic imbalance in spinal anesthesia. Okay, so this is used for lumbar L2, L3, L4, L5 block, but here it blocks both thoracic, spinal, thoracic, lumbar and sacral segments. So these are the important points for both epidural and spinal anesthesia. I'll show you the picture, just 5 minutes. Okay, this extradural block will also produce caudal anesthesia. Okay, that is sacral. If it produces caudal anesthesia, then we call it as sacral epidural block. In sacral epidural block, there will be something called as caudal anesthesia will be produced. So what are the complications of this neuraxial block? So if you see complications of neuraxial block, the first complication is presence of hypotension. This hypotension is the most common complication of neuraxial block. Why is there hypotension? It is because of vasodilatation will result in hypotension. Once there is hypotension, you should give either IV fluids or you should give vasopressor agents are the treatment of choice for this hypotension. Either IV fluids or vasopressors should be given. So in the vasopressors, you should always think of giving phenylephrine. This phenylephrine can be given in pregnant lady. See, this phenylephrine can be given. Okay, this phenylephrine, it can be given in pregnant women also, because this phenylephrine crosses the placenta minimally. When compared to all the other drugs, it has minimum capacity to cross the placenta, and as a result it does not cause fetal acidosis. So you can safely give phenylephrine in pregnant women, and it is also used in mild mitral stenosis because it does not cause tachycardia. So because it does not cause tachycardia, you can use this in mild mitral stenosis also. Then the other vasopressors which are important here are, we have ephedrine and mephentermine, which are also important. Ephedrine and mephentermine are also important, which are vasopressor drugs. Then we have something called as bradycardia. The other side effects include, we have bradycardia has a side effect. For this bradycardia, you can give the drug atropine can be given. Then this can also cause respiratory depression or retention of urine. Especially this retention of urine is the most common post-operative complication of central neuraxial blockade. This is important. This retention of urine is the most common post-operative complication of central neuraxial blockade. Then we have to give even one more, that is total spinal anesthesia. Then we can have total spinal anesthesia also. In this total spinal anesthesia, there is anesthesia which has been given, and it spreads to 31 pairs of spinal nerves, and thus the 31 pairs of spinal nerves are blocked, and sometimes there can be CNS spread of the drug is also there. So it is dreadful complication which is total spinal anesthesia. Then you can see this is also associated with systemic toxicity of the drug. It has vasovagal effect and also infections. So these are the main complications of neuraxial blockade. Then we have the one more complication, which is post-dural puncture headache. This is very important. So if you see in this post-dural puncture headache, there is CSF leak, and this CSF leak will decrease the intracranial pressure. This will cause traction of nerves originating from the pia mater. This will also cause traction on nerve fibers originating from pia mater. So if you see onset, because of this traction on nerve fibers, this will result in headache. Okay, that is called as post-dural puncture headache, because it occurs after the dura, after subarachnoid block, or after spinal anesthesia. You are going to remove some amount of CSF. There is, even though not intentionally, but there is a little amount or minimal amount of CSF leak will be present, and this will decrease the intracranial pressure. So this decreased intracranial pressure produces traction on the nerve fibers originating from pia mater, and this will cause headache. Okay, the onset, if you see, most commonly this occurs 12 to 24 hours post procedure. This mostly occurs 12 to 24 hours post procedure. So this is very important. Can also occur immediately also, but rarely. So site, if you see, the site of the headache is mostly occipital, followed by frontal, followed by retroorbital. The site is occipital, followed by frontal, followed by retroorbital, and this headache stays for around 7 to 10 days. This headache stays for around 7 to 10 days. The most important pathognomic sign is change in position will aggravate the headache. So when the person suddenly sleeps, then there is increased headache. When the person suddenly gets up, then there is increased headache. So this headache is mainly increased or aggravated with change in position. Now, what are the predisposing factors for this type of headache? Predisposing factors include, we have dural cutting needle or spinal needle, wide bore needle, multiple attempts, and pregnancy. When we use dural cutting or spinal needle, use of wide bore needle, multiple attempts for getting the anesthesia, and pregnancy. So all these are the predisposing factors for post-dural puncture headache. Then if you see treatment, for the treatment you can use either caffeine and NSAIDs can be used. Okay, definitive treatment, if you were asked, you can use epidural patch, which produces 90% immediate relief. but we won't do all epidural anesthesia patch for many patients. For most of the cases we give NSAIDs and caffeine, and this will resolve the condition. The other side effects, like there are epidural or spinal hematoma. Transient neurological symptoms are associated with this spinal anesthesia, and backache is also seen in these patients. Then what are the contraindications of central neuraxial blockade? The contraindications include there is increased intracranial pressure. The contraindications are increased intracranial pressure, infection at the site, that is local infection, or if there is hypovolemic shock which is associated with this disorder, or if the platelet count are less than 50,000 because of coagulation disorder, which is the absolute contraindication, if the patient's refusal obviously, and severe heart disease. So all these are the contraindications of neuraxial blockade. That is, those include increased intracranial pressure, local infection, bleeding diastasis, especially platelet count less than 50,000, hypovolemic shock, patient's refusal, if there is severe heart disease. Now, if there is heart disease, I said we cannot give central neuraxial blockade. Then what should be done for severe heart disease? For severe heart disease, you can give general anesthesia, and if the heart disease is minor, mild to moderate heart disease, then you can give epidural anesthesia. If there is mild to moderate heart disease, epidural anesthesia is preferred. If there is severe heart disease, then general anesthesia is preferred. So this is about central neuraxial anesthesia. Okay, I'll just show you the pictures and I'll end the class today. So in the spinal anesthesia, for this, see, this is the epidural anesthesia, where the needle will pierce the, first it will pierce the skin, subcutaneous tissue. Okay, it is piercing the skin, subcutaneous tissue. Then this is supraspinous ligament, and it is piercing the interspinous ligament. It is piercing the infraspinous ligament. Then this is the epidural. So this is the epidural space, ligamentum flavum, and then epidural space, and it has entered into the epidural space. Okay, then if you see the spinal needle, it pierces the skin, subcutaneous tissue, supraspinous ligament, interspinous ligament, ligamentum flavum, and it has pierced the dura mater, extradural space is pierced, and this is the arachnoid mater is also pierced, and this is the subarachnoid space. Okay, in the subarachnoid space we give the anesthesia. Okay, so this is spinal needle. Then if you see here, this is the position, in sitting position for doing the anesthesia, and here this is the spinal line. We will see the tip of the transverse processes, and we will give the anesthesia mostly in L3 L4, or if not possible we can also give in L4 L5 block, but mostly we give it in L3 L4 region most commonly. L3 L4 space you give. Then so if you see, these are the spinal needles. Okay, in this spinal needle, or this is also called as Quincke's spinal needle. Okay, this needle is epidural needle. Which is Tau's epidural needle. Okay, so I think you can at least identify this, visualize this part, and you can identify it. So this is about the central neuraxial blockade. Thank you guys for watching my lecture. Thank you.